Hey, what's up? I'm Matt Nicola with ATutsPlus.com, and today we're going to be creating this simple vintage effect in After Effects. Awesome, so we can see we have some light streaks going on in the vertical and the horizontal. Vertical, horizontal. We also have some grain, we have a vignette, we have a little bit of a radial blur, and that's what we're going to be creating today. I did this tutorial all based off some inspiration from PSDTutsPlus.com in addition to PhotoTutsPlus.com, and I would encourage you to check those sites in addition to the other Tuts Plus sites for some inspiration. Remembering that Photoshop to After Effects translating can be a little bit tricky at times, but you can get some really cool new looks for your footage. Right-clicking in the project panel, we are going to import file, and under our footage file, under the project files, we're going to select Clip A and open. Clicking and dragging that and bringing it into the canvas panel or the composition panel, we can create a new composition. This look is achieved by doing multiple adjustment layers. I tried it several ways, added the effects directly to the layer, but I found that for my look, for my purpose, creating more adjustment layers was the best route. So right click new, and we're going to do adjustment layer, and we are going to just duplicate 4 of those adjustment layers by hitting Command D or Control D if you're on a PC. With the first adjustment layer selected, let's hit enter on the keyboard and rename that focus ring. In fact, let's rename that radial blur. I don't know why I call it focus ring. Adjustment layer 2, let's hit enter on the keyboard and rename that curves. The next adjustment layer, let's hit enter and rename that contrast. And the last adjustment layer, hit enter on the keyboard and let's name that saturation. Now under the effects presets, let's find all those effects and click and drag those to the effect layer. So just do this with me. Under the effects presets, type in curves, find curves, click and drag it to the curves layer. For radial blur, we're going to use a fast blur. Under fast blur, click and drag it and bring it to the radial blur. Let's set that to 10. We're just going to do this real simple, really fast just to get through it, and then we'll turn it on and off and explain things to you. So set the blurriness to 10, repeat edge pixel, go to curves. In our graph editor under the channel, let's go to the red and just set your red up to look very similar to this. So again, your blue should look similar to this. Your green should be about here. And your red should look like this. In fact, crushed a little bit more. Awesome. Next, contrast. We're going to set our contrast to 30. And we're going to set our saturation to 30. I would also encourage you to play with these layers, their hierarchy, and see what works best for you. Again, I've tried this several ways, and I found that the way that we're going to set it up today is what I needed for my example. Let's select the radial blur, and you can go through and toggle these ones on and off and see what each effect did and check that out. And also, if you need to change anything, that's an easy way for you to turn it on and off and single those out. So for our radial blur, we don't want the whole thing blurred. We want to see the footage. Let's click and hold on the either, it should be rectangle tool if you're just opening After Effects, or perhaps it's the ellipse tool. But essentially we want the ellipse tool, so click and hold and go to ellipse tool, and then double click the ellipse tool. That's blurring the inside of the mask. We want to invert that by selecting this checkbox. We want a radial blur on the outside, and we're going to hit MM on the keyboard with the radial blur selected. That's going to pull up our mask path properties, and we are going to feather that out 589 pixels, and we're going to expand our mask 27 pixels. Great. So if you're like, I can't tell what that did, double click the radial blur and then toggle on and off this transparency, and you can see the white areas are blurred and the feathered areas are a feathered blur. Perfect. We are cruising right along. Next thing, what we'll be creating is our light leak. So we'll do that by right clicking in the timeline panel, new, solid, and we are going to rename that light leak. We're going to make it the comp size and select the color and go down to a orange color, which I like right there. Say OK. With the ellipse tool selected, we're going to create a mask right onto our light leak layer by clicking and dragging. Hitting MM on the keyboard with the light leak layer selected, we want to pull up the mask path properties. We want to set our feather to 450 and our expansion again to 27. Awesome. So now to create the light leak movement, we're going to set a wiggle position, wiggle property by selecting the light leak layer and hitting P on the keyboard, pulling up our position properties. Let's hit and hold Alt on the keyboard and click on the stopwatch, and then we're going to type in this expression: wiggle 20, 400 parenthesis. And don't forget the beginning parenthesis, I apologize. So it should be wiggle parenthesis 20, 400 in parenthesis. Click outside of there, and then you can scrub through the timeline and see that it's moving. Perfect. So we're losing a little bit of the edge pixels just because the mask was drawn outside of the frame. That's a simple fix. Select the light leak layer, hit S on the keyboard, that pulls up our scale properties. Let's just scale that up to 200%. Scroll out a little bit, either using your mouse wheel or hitting Command minus or Control minus if you're on a PC. And then we want to sort of position the light leak so it's roughly right about there. Scrolling through, we want to make sure that it doesn't ever, we don't ever lose the edge pixels again, and we don't. Perfect. So I want to do, we have the vertical, I want to do a horizontal. Let's select the light leak layer and hit Command D or Control D again if you're on a Mac, and that duplicates light leak. And let's rename that light leak 2. With the light leak 2 selected, let's hit R on the keyboard, pulling up our rotation properties, and let's just rotate it 90 degrees. Now I know that this is not going to be big enough because horizontally there's more pixels than there are vertically. So let's hit S with the light leak layer 2 selected, and let's drag that up to 300. And then I want to move that up a little bit so it's in the frame. Make sure you click in the middle of both the masks when you're moving them, otherwise you'll start adjusting the mask path, and you don't want to do that. So scrub through the timeline and see how they interact with each other, and I'm pretty happy with that. Also, if you have a slower computer or a slower graphics card, I would always sort of check things out with half resolution selected. If you do full, I know I've got a pretty fast machine, kind of, sort of, and it doesn't always work as well when you're doing multiple effects and stuff. So I always just kind of try to keep it on half or third or quarter, whatever works best for you. Just another option. Awesome. So let's continue. Next, we're going to do our vignette. So let's right-click, New, Solid, and we're going to rename that Vignette. Make a comp size and color. Let's select the color, and it's obviously going to be black. From here, we're going to double click on the ellipse tool, creating a mask again, and we're going to invert that. With the vignette selected, hit MM on the keyboard, pulling up our mask path properties, and set the feather to, again, 450, and set the expansion to 27. If you want to see that again, obviously double click it, pull it up, toggle on and off the transparency, and we can see our vignette. Older 16mm footage is less of an ellipse and more of a circle, and it has a harder vignette edge. I don't like that. What's important is for the client, or for whatever purpose you're doing, for them to see the footage, and that's why this is set up the way it is. Okay, so next we are going to add a grain layer, so New, Adjustment layer, and then we are going to hit Enter and rename that grain. Under the effects presets, we're going to type in grain, just add grain, click and drag that to the grain. Keep the intensity at 1. All we're going to change is the size to 0.6, and for viewing mode, so you can see it right away, we're going to change it to final output. Now here's our last little bit for this tutorial. We're going to right click, New, and Solid. This is our magenta layer. From there, we're going to make it the comp size, and we're going to select the color, and we're going to go up to a magenta. Select the magenta, say OK, OK, and hit T on the keyboard. That's going to pull up our opacity properties, and we're going to set that to 10. So there you go, you have it. Simple vintage effect in After Effects. You can scrub through and take a look at it, and you know, sometimes someone might be like, well, these light streaks are pretty dominant, and they distract the viewer a little bit. You can change that if you like. I'm really happy with this. It looks very vintage to me. But if you want to change it, you can select the light streak 2, hit shift on the keyboard, and hit light leak 1 again. Light streak, light leak, same thing. And press T on the keyboard, pulling up the opacity properties, and you can change that down to whatever you want. Again, I like it. I'm pretty happy with it. So there you go. Simple vintage effect in After Effects. My name is Matt Nicola with AETutsPlus.com. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a good day.